I think today would be great to talk about our most difficult shifts because there are a lot of reasons why those shifts are difficult. And I think it'll help us with looking at how do we create new playbooks for ourselves where we have the support that we need based on science and also how we feel as women. So do you actually remember your hardest shift while you worked for Vancouver?
There's a lot to choose from. Besides my shift where I got injured, I think the one that stands out the most is July 4th, one year. We had 20 calls in a 24-hour shift. We had 2 working house fires and we had a field fire. And I remember running the 2 house fires, and by that point I was smoked. I'd been fasting all morning.
Oh my,
Of
no.
course, yes, because
Are you serious?
Yep. So,
Oh my gosh.
ultimate peak of my performance of bodybuilding and weightlifting and trying to get in peak shape. So, going at work, I just kept doing the same habits as I did every day off. However,
Which we're going to talk about that later.
yes,
That's crazy.
I learned very fast that doesn't work. I just didn't have the energy to keep going through shift. I needed a sandwich, to be quite frank. But I remember the difference in the crew as we jumped out of the engine and we were going to go in this field and start digging line. And I looked over and my coworker just jumped over this 6-foot tall fence like it was nothing and just left. And so here I am with all the tools and I'm trying to chuck it over a 6-foot fence and scale over to try and find him so we could go to work. And never again did I find him until the end of the fire.
So wild. Like, sometimes I just don't understand.
It's like the Wild Wild West.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's free for all.
Wow. So do you remember like the last big event of that shift? Like at what point in the day?
Yeah, by 7 o'clock the next morning, I just remember feeling absolutely spent, completely exhausted, drained, and I was so weepy. I could tell my hormonal cycle was just spiked, and I remember ending the shift just trying to hide out in the locker room, waiting for it to be done so I could just get a break and be off shift again to rest and relax.
And what's crazy about that is I could just see, like, I can just visualize, like, the dudes you're working with, and they're like, oh, what a shift, like, wow, and, like, there's this rah. So even though when you dig a little deeper and you get them one-on-one, they might tell you, like, oh, yeah, I went home exhausted. Like,
oh, yeah, and you can tell.
That is not the dialogue that happens on shift, right?
No, you never admit to the weakness. Instead, we, sat at the table before that and we talked about, oh yeah, we were up all night, we hit 20 calls, and we're all high-fiving each other, and that's a record. We did awesome this shift, writing our names on the cabinet, and all the while we just completely wrecked ourselves, and no one's willing to admit it and talk about it.
What would you say were so when you're looking at this from a conscious space now, looking back, what can you say, like, okay, this was an issue there, this added to the strain, this was another factor, besides like just the fires, which we all know that taxes and fatigues you. You add the fasting on top of that. What other factors were at play that for this shift it was just so loaded?
I didn't come into shift prepared like I would now. So now I have the tools to understand what kind of rest and nutrition I need before expending a bunch of energy at work or a shift where potentially we can run 20 calls. So I didn't understand that baseline. So going into it, I just was trying to be like my crew. Everybody else was doing the same diet. They're doing the same workouts. It was very cool to do CrossFit, and it was functional fitness. So it made sense to me. But I didn't know that putting those all together, and especially with the female anatomy and physiology, it just clashes. So the start of my shift, I was setting myself up for failure without even knowing it, thinking I was optimizing my health, and when in fact I was coming in the opposite.
The optimizing our health, like, it drives me crazy how much, well, first of all, even 7 to 10 years ago, there was so much less out there on optimizing health in the first place, right?
Yes.
Like now we have a lot more that we're looking at in terms of health and performance. Like I don't know how the fire service hasn't entirely caught up with, say, like sports training. Like there's a lot in athletics about performance and how you can optimize that, but it hasn't really bled over very much into the fire service. I think for myself, I've seen a lot of individuals, right, who came from really athletic backgrounds, and they try to influence their peers on things that are really practical and help. But overall, now I think we've come such a far ways, but even then, the data that we have isn't super accurate for us. So here you're thinking, I'm bodybuilding, I'm cutting, I need to fast, and you aren't giving your body the energy and the tools it needs to have such a dynamic job. It's crazy that that is, I see that so often with female firefighters.
Absolutely. And I think it's getting better. I remember about a year ago, we had someone come in and do a wellness presentation and talk about the types of workouts you should be doing on shift versus off shift. So they talked about the importance of being on shift and not doing 100% for your workout, actually scaling back to 60, 50% so that you have that room and that capacity when you get called to work or you get a job.
I remember my most difficult shift, same day, same kind of day, where we had like 27 calls in a shift and I was trying to work out. It was just one of those days that, like, you know, you're 4 times into your attempt at
you've got
getting your workout in.
5 minutes of a workout over an hour.
Over an hour. And I remember like my neck and my back just hurt so much. And I was barely in my workout and I'm trying to do it. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I'm pulling my muscles. I'm like trying to ease the tension and I'm still trying to do my workout. But there was nothing in my workout remotely that would have caused that tension in my back and in my neck. But just being that busy, working with a crew that I really didn't know. I think I had worked with them maybe twice before. And you know that on a day that is that busy, it's just going to keep being that busy. So then you're more, on and upregulated. And there was the usual in somewhere like Portland, like a stabbing and a shooting and, all these higher level calls. But I went home the next day and I'm pretty sure I did my normal like off-shift temp cycling routine, and I did, my little meditation, and it took me like by the next shift, I wasn't even remotely recovered still. I was so mentally and physically just strained, and I couldn't, like, I didn't do anything.
Yeah, the more activated or strained you actually are, the greater the practice, the more time you have to be into your practice and more intentional you have to be just to bring yourself down from that sympathetic to that parasympathetic.
And it's so interesting that the fire service, we haven't made that correlation between always ready and hypervigilance.
We haven't. And I like to think of it now in my healing as I've created a toolbox that is like a dimmer switch. So we want to be on and be performing at a higher level when we need to be. So I have the tools to actually turn myself on and activate myself to get the job done. But then the beauty of it is now I understand how to slide that dial back so that I'm at my baseline and able just to be living and showing up as I'm supposed to, not showing up activated, hypervigilant, scanning at all times for anything unsafe or pinch points or different calls. It's just having that rest and be safe in the moment.
And I love that this podcast, like that's our goal, right? Being able to give women in shift work the ability to look through these tools and to consider playing with oh, maybe this will support me. Maybe this will help me, instead of us operating the way that the dudes do, which is very similar to like us wearing their turnouts. Like,
Absolutely. 2 sizes too big.
we trip, waste
Yep.
energy.
Have to pull my pants physically up just to step up onto the tailboard to even pull hose. So think of the energy expend just from having to do those extra movements, the extra weight, the having to think about it, and constantly in my brain having to compensate for gear that doesn't fit, and how to compensate to be able to do my job still.
And then if we also think about like SCBA packs, that is a universal tool that no matter if you're a short body, a large body, like we all wear the same thing. How many women go out on neck injuries?
Most women actually retire from neck injuries. That's the number one reason that women medically retire.
And the idea of when you have your SCBA pack and you're like having to look up and you're like straining your neck to look around,
because
the
the
top
visor
of the SCBA
and the visor on your helmet
and the visor
restricts.
on your helmet. So we want to start changing things so that isn't happening to us, not even just on a physical level, but the energetic level too, and the mental, emotional level. Like all of those play a factor in this need to create a new way of doing things.
I love how you said the mental side of things with the SCBA, because for me, when we switched from our MSA into a Scott pack, it changed the dynamic of the shape on your back, and I could not look up anymore because the back of my helmet would hit the top of the pack, and I could no longer functional. I couldn't pull a ladder and throw it where I needed to go because I couldn't see where the tip was. So my confidence dropped. Now I was no longer confident showing up. I was constantly trying to figure out, how am I going to get this done? How am I going to navigate this? And it was this extra layer that caused a lot of insecurity in the long run.
And there's like, how are women supposed to perform at their best when in the background you have to think about those things? Like that's just, it's a recipe for...
We're not just showing up for the job. You're never just showing up for work to just do your job. There's all these underlying layers that are constantly on your mind, always running in the background. I mean, just that alone is mentally exhausting, let alone the physical tax on our bodies through the work.
Yeah. I have hope that the future is changing with some of those larger department issues, but for now, we're forced to mitigate those things with how we show up and support ourselves too.
I even know some women that have taken their gear and gotten it sewn in or mended off shift just so that it could actually fit them and they could do their job. So I don't see a lot of my male coworkers doing that. Everything is already one size fits all, or they're loud enough and confident enough to ask for what they want, and then they receive what they need. Whereas I feel, at least in my experience as a woman asking for something, it feels like a nuisance, or it's something they hadn't thought of and now it's causing them extra work and they have to shop around and find the right equipment. And so I never wanted to be a burden, so I never brought it up. I just made do with whatever we had.
Yeah.
So as we start to dive into statistics and stats, we see that not even women were included in any of these studies since 1993.
93.
That blows my mind. And that's just in a general population as far as physical ability. And that doesn't even include the wear and tear or the added letter of no sleep or any of the factors of shift work. That's just the basic population, male, female.
I think that in the future, women in shift work would do really well looking at women's athletics because there is a good amount of data there. But like you said, that's not factoring in the added component of the hypervigilance of shift work and also the sleep debt and the sleep deprivation. So more and more studies now are being done more specifically about women, but my mind was blown when I saw that women in shift work have 60% higher of a chance for breast cancer than the average population.
That is insanely high. And I know that in general overscoping numbers wise, firefighters have a 300% higher chance of getting cancer in general. And then you add 60% on top of that for just females. And then the anatomy is different. We have more fat in our bodies, and that is what pulls in the cancer and the toxins and the smoke and the IDLHs that we're in. It gets pulled into our neck and our body fat.
Yeah.
So we're just more susceptible just by showing up.
And then because we want to not just be fit, but look fit, we're so aggressive in our fat loss approaches, and literally letting go of that fat releases all of those toxins in our bodies. So then we have more of a load because we're having to fight, like we just put everything into our system. Or the opposite being true, which I find for the story with my body's like, why would I let that go? Like that's being stored somewhere to protect you. I don't want that in your system. So just retaining fat is something that my body doesn't want to let go of a protective layer.
And for me, it was mass moves mass. I always wanted to have a strong muscular skeleton because I wanted to have that mass to move mass. So for me, I cycled between a lot of carb loading and gaining muscle mass. And then the other pole of me wanted to be in shape, fit, and actually match my health and what I could do. So then I balanced that with food because that was the only avenue to make any drastic changes. So I know for me, there's so many times I've kept myself at a calorie restriction going into work initially before even adding on the extra expenditure of calories.
Yeah, when you need calories to perform. And that's just, so we have all the layers, all the normal layers of shift work, exposures and burdens that, they have as just the general population of shift workers. And then on top of that, we're 60% more susceptible for breast cancer. I also just found out women who work night shifts have 70% higher rates of depressive traits than just normal day workers.
And you add that to the national levels where women are just more susceptible to depression on average.
And then according to NIOSH, women in shift work have higher percentages of autoimmune conditions. And
absolutely.
Like we have, in some sense, when you go into this job, you want to serve. Like there's this amazing desire to help. And we don't realize that really the deck is stacked against us. Like
from the beginning,
there are so many things that are bad for us in the natural environment and lifestyle of shift work. And to a degree, I know for me, I felt like it just became this full-time job to try and optimize my health. And my motivation was that I just didn't feel great. And I was like, how are people okay feeling like this horrible all the time?
This can't be it.
This cannot be, like, this is the dream job. And that was really hard for me. So I put so much effort and energy into just finding and I remember you doing similar things. I felt like every time I talked to you, it was, oh, I got that acupressure mat.
Yep.
Oh, I got the ice, the eye band.
Well, that's the funny thing. You see somebody embodying the life that you want, and you were the most grounded person that I know. So watching you, I'm like, I need to be more like this. So I'm going to buy all these tools, all these books, all these journals, and try to be like that, more grounded. However, when you're not using them on a regular basis, then none of the tools in the world will matter unless you're actually using them and you buy into the concept of what they mean and why they work for you. Because until I understand why something's working, I don't really see the point to even get invested because there's so many things thrown at you. I would be broke if I bought everything.
Absolutely. And on top of that, as we have talked about in our first couple podcasts, there are so many things that actually are affecting us from not even just like a physical energy level, but in an emotional and mental and spiritual strain level. Like
And political. I mean, the environmental.
And political. Would say no more.
Yep.
But like for me, alluding to that busy shift for me, the neck and back pain had nothing to do with the calls we ran on. It didn't have to do with my workout. It was just because that was my body signaling that it was under more strain than it knew how to adapt to.
It was giving you a sign that it's had enough.
Yes, it was giving that sign. And so, like acupressure mats and all these other tools that we can buy, yes, they'll help to a degree and to a level, but the underlining things that are bothering us, like women have a higher sensitivity in their nervous systems. We tend to notice a lot of subconscious things before they actually even register in our like cognitive thoughts. So it's almost like a smoke detector being on like super high sensitivity, so that you light a candle and it goes off.
Mm-hmm.
The guys are different. Like their alarms aren't going to go off until like there's an actual threat most of the time.
Yeah, the intuition of women is so powerful.
It is. And so without learning how to, like you say, use that dimmer switch and actually work with our nervous system and our biology in that way, we tend to strain and be overstrained and overburdened, and the allostatic load adds up so much faster. And it's easy, like I've gone through phases where I'm like, oh darn this sensitivity, like
yes,
it can feel so much like not a gift, right? Like it can
a curse.
feel like a curse. And I think that the maturity, the challenge that we have is setting ourselves on this path of growth where we don't look at that as a curse. We look at it as something that we can work with and that actually is a superpower. And that is because it's not talked about very much. That's hard to see as a superpower, right?
But I love that you say superpower, because that hits. It's true. You feel superhuman
when you can show up and actually use that sensitivity. On a call, my last shift, we went on a call of a woman whose husband had just passed, and my officer is doing the officerly things, and he stepped away, and I just went up to her, and I could see in her eyes like the sadness and the grief and the pain, and I put my hand on her chair, and then she put her hand on top of mine, and I put my other hand on top of her hand, and I was just like, this is so hard. How are you doing? And in that moment, like you are showing up in a way that the guys are not going to.
Absolutely. A moment of connection and giving her, honestly what she truly needed, just to be seen. Somebody is going through one of the hardest days in their lives and they just want to be seen. You want somebody to sit beside you, just steady, present, and patient.
Yeah. And so even though there are times that I complain that, oh my gosh, I need my 9 hours of sleep, and oh man, that was the guys I don't think had as much of a strain on that shift, but I come home and I'm like, oh my gosh, we had three calls around deaths, that is just heavier for me. But then realizing also that sensitivity does allow me to show up in those ways. So it's something that I have the opportunity to nurture. And when I nurture and support that, both on an energetic and a nervous system level, it allows me to keep using that. And instead of being in fight or flight because I'm triggered by so many things, I am aware, and I build this relationship with my nervous system that allows me to show up as me.
Yeah, I love that. Well, since you brought up sensitivity and being more emotionally aware of what's going on around you on these scenes, I like to factor that back to hormones, right? That's what set us aside. And we have more sensitivity based on our hormone cycles and where we're at. How have you seen the impact of shift work and cycles, and where has that left you in your hormone journey?
The fact that women overall in shift work have higher rates of irregular periods, also,
which is common in athletes as well.
yes, it's common in athletes as well. We also, because of the stress and the irregular sleep, so many women in shift work also have uterine fibroids. So
I'd like to see that statistic because I would almost bet my life that it's in the 70% because 9 out of 10 women that I know and meet who are female firefighters have had a history of fibroids. They've had active ablations. They've had multiple miscarriages, infertility issues. And there's no other obvious factor besides the environmental exposures that we're being seen.
Yeah. And isn't it like women in their first trimester
the most susceptible?
The most susceptible to having miscarriages.
I did. I mean, that is right when I hit the first week of my second trimester is when I had a miscarriage. And it was that first trimester still working shifts because you're not showing, you're not carrying, and you're still in that awkward time where you can still do your job. You're still physically fit. You're able to push. However, you're also more susceptible to cancers and toxins because your body is changing and going through these changes. So just that underlying stress and factor and being on shift and the pull and resources my body actually needed to use were being expelled to work. My body was left with nothing else to give. And, that was the result. And I'm not alone in that. I work with so many women who have similar story. And I watch, my sisters who are having families and starting this process, and they're staying on the line as long as they can, when in reality, the minute you find out you're pregnant, you should come off the line.
I would imagine it's a very humbling thing to do, right?
It's like asking for help. Yes. Now you have to be the burden. Now you have to be the one that's different.
Well, we're already different, and we're already in so many ways othered. So when you use your voice,
one more thing,
you're asking, for one more thing. That's really hard to do, and depending on the level of support that you get at your department, that feels insurmountable.
And in my experience, there was no support. There was no pregnancy policy when I did get pregnant and decided to start my family. There was no maternity policy. There was no maternity leave. I was just told, well, you have the same policy as everybody else. You get, 10 shifts off. And that's it. 10 shifts off to bond. But where's my shifts off to recover because I physically have to carry this baby and deliver. And then I'm expected to come back to shift 3 days later. It's not humanly possible.
No. It's not.
But it's expected of us. And then it's expected after your 10 weeks of recovery. There wasn't even a position for me to slide into light duty, maybe to, dip my toe in the water again to get back on routine. No, I just went straight back into shift.
Honestly, this is why I love this demographic, because the women in shift work are truly superhuman.
And so heroic in so many small ways. And they've carried so much. They say nothing about it. Yeah. That is why nobody talks about it, because we're all so tough and holding it on the inside, but yet.
And conditioned because of the expectation that, it's just what we have to do. Did you ever see, speaking of women having to bear the burden of ridiculousness, did you see the comedian who had, she was doing a routine on women with their periods and tampons?
No, but now I'm curious.
Oh my gosh. So she says essentially that, women are expected on their period to just go about their day, do everything. And I'm not going to be nearly as humorous as she is, but as she's making her case, she's like, and then tampons came around. And while women were expected to do normal things, then there was the added component of tampon commercials. And so you'd have tampon commercials illustrating a woman who is, you can still go swimming. Go do your swimming workout. Oh, you want to ride a horse? Get up on that horse. You got a tampon to manage everything. And she's like, I don't want to ride a horse on a normal day, let alone when I'm on my period.
I couldn't agree more. Yes. Look at all the things you could do if you had, one, any energy to do them or wanted to.
Right. And side note, I love more and more the period stimulator videos that are coming out where they put the electric stem on dudes on their abdomens. Have you not seen
I've
these?
seen this with the contractions.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah,
Yes.
I've seen this.
So,
and
oh my God.
Or the holding, you have to hold an ice cube for 10 seconds, and that mirrors what a contraction feels like. And I remember at the birthing classes watching the husbands and spouses and fathers try to hold these ice cubes, and none of them could make it. And I just remember thinking, this is why we carry the babies.
So it's just like, wow, if the dudes were in the same position, I think things would be vastly different.
Well, we'd have the accommodations already.
Yes.
Just like the accommodations were made initially in the fire service with bunks and beds and individualized dorms, things that men needed.
Yeah.
And it just got put to light because the majority is a male field. We weren't into this field until recently. So those considerations haven't been factored in.
But they need to be, because
it's about time they are.
We're on 28-day cycles and a dude is on a 24-hour cycle. So that is literally Venus and Mars, right? Like there should be zero comparison. It's one thing to say we expect you to be able to do the job and these things in the job as requirements. Great, awesome. But don't expect me to train and prep and do the same things that a guy does in order to be at that performance level. Because with a 28-day cycle, there are times that we naturally have way more energy, and then that we absolutely are supposed to sit on the couch, read a book, and chill.
It's
right?
like the seasons. We, every 28 days, go through all 4 seasons.
Yeah. And so I started looking at this more because I had uterine fibroids and ended up having a surgery to remove them. And so that was my start of, I think I probably should start paying attention to this more. And surprisingly, there's a lot of research out there on it. So if you look at like the Period Lab, she has absolutely awesome content on the different phases and what you can eat and how you can train and physiological factors. Or Kayla Barnes, who's like the female longevity expert, her protocols, like you want data. She has so much personalized data, but still it's based on our cycles, right? And then you have like Mindy Pelz. She wrote one of my favorite books of all time for women called Fast Like a Girl, where we don't intermittent fast just per the usual. We fast based on certain windows in our period that are conducive or not. And so I started getting more and more into that research. And at first you're like, good God, yet another thing I gotta
another factor
plan my life around. Are you serious? And then there are 4 different phases. So everything in your life shifts based on those phases. That feels like a lot.
It's a full-time job trying to manage the seasons.
It does feel like that. And I just started by like reading and following a lot of social media people, and then I would dip my toe. So fasting according to my cycle was like the first thing that I did. And then I was curious about like, well, if I'm fasting, I should probably train a little different. So I got into training more specifically for cycle. And then I was like, well, I would like to eat to support my hormones. So it was very much phases for me, because there was no way I could do this massive overhaul of everything at once.
Oh, like me? That's how I like to run my life. It's all or nothing.
You totally would do that.
Oh, I did.
And it's so funny because I have always thought that I was an all or nothing person, but then I met you.
And you realized
you showed me a whole different level.
Yes.
So we have these resources now to become educated on our cycles. And in the future, it would be really fun to do a podcast looking at those phases and like how we have seen women and ourselves have integrated that even more. But ultimately, the 28-day cycle, that's why one day you could go on a shift and you can like do your workout, have a busy shift, cook, drive, do all the things, and you go home and you're like, yeah, I did the thing. I feel pretty darn good. And then, 2 weeks later, you have a shift that was even less demanding, and you go home and you're like, oh my God, like it was taken out of me.
I was always curious about that because I've had that experience. I remember running shifts that were just physically the hardest ones I've worked, where I've been cutting holes on the roof or doing rescue out of a window, just really physically demanding operations. And I remember coming off shift feeling great and feeling rested and like I could go about my day. I went to the gym, I had a great lunch with a friend, go about your life. But on other days, we have 3 or 4 calls, even the lightest day that you can imagine. And yet I'm going home, I'm picking fights, I'm irritable, I need a nap by 2 p.m. And I could never figure out what the correlation was in my mood.
Right there.
And even still to this day, I need to work on my 28-day cycling. But wow, what a factor it makes.
And I think that there is a lot more research, like Stacy Sims. Stacy Sims is the premier women's athletics specialist. And she has a lot of research done on women's athletics. And she has protocols. She helps female athletes with protocols so that they can actually train based on their cycles, and then they start performing way better. So, like bizarrely, Achilles heel tendon strains and rips. So many female athletes have those during a specific phase of their cycle because everything just changes. And so for us, we're climbing stairs with all of our gear. We're stepping on and off the rig. Like we actually have a lot in our environment that could injure us. And yet we have zero consideration.
We have no consideration.
No consideration for that.
I mean, think about the changes, not to go back, but think about the changes after you have a delivery and you have a child. It takes 12 months for your body to go back, for your hips to go back to the size they were, and for everything, your ligaments to toughen up again and be able to create that stability around your spine to prevent you from injuries. It takes 12 months, yet we're expected to come back, I would say 12 weeks, but it's not even that. I had 8 weeks, and then you're right back to work to the same exact work you were doing before, not even factoring in all the changes that have happened. Just like in the 28-day cycle, we don't factor in the changes that we need to make. We just keep going every day like it's the same.
And it's just asking for trouble and issues. So as we are behind the times in the organizations for women's health and being cognizant of the things that are beneficial or not for women, it's on us, right? Like nobody's coming to save us.
No, I've learned that.
So we have to take that ownership and responsibility of ourselves to learn how to create these optimizations and do what's best for us. And also, as you alluded to before, as I've alluded to before, so much, especially on social media, is thrown out on possible things and ways we can optimize that it can become this full-time job and motivated a little bit out of desperation, right? Because we want to feel better. Like women we're so much, our tolerance for bull is a lot lower, I think, and what we are willing to put up with and deal with, especially when we're sleep deprived, way lower than a dude. Like we're not going to accept like bad treatment as much, bad attitudes as much. And so again, that sensitivity is definitely a factor on when we look at what could possibly help us. So there's the physical side of things like nutrition and training. There's the energetics and spiritual side of things, which is like boundaries and using your voice, and the like emotional toll that it can take on us. There's nervous system regulation and practices for like increasing energy or down regulating so that we can move into that rest and digest. So there are all these different factors, and as long as we're approaching them from the standpoint of like fix, it just adds more pressure.
There's a lot of pressure. And I know in my own experience, I'm now, after going through a couple recovery centers and some programs and just being educated, I've learned all this array of tools and somatics and different techniques to do just what you're saying. And sometimes it's overwhelming to where when I am triggered or activated, I become so in my head that I can't actually recall which tool to use. So one thing I've been doing this last couple months is really trying to just be in my body and be embodied and ask myself, what do I need?
Mm-hmm.
What do I need right now? And then whatever I'm needing or have that comes up to mind, or just have this sense that comes over your body of what you need, I give that to myself now. And it prevents this, oh gosh, I'm activated. I know I need to do something, but I don't know what. Instead, I'm just trusting in myself.
Yeah.
Like I have the education, I have the knowledge, I have the experience. Now it's just knowing what's right for you and then doing it.
I love what you just said about knowing what's right for you and then listening, like dropping into your body and listening to your body. And I can't wait for us to do an episode on building a relationship with your body, because whoa, is that such a process. And I know you and I both have so much we could say in that department. I had it was a nutritionist or a wellness coach. I was telling her about all the things I was doing. Like, well, I have this pain, but like I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing that. And she was like, okay, so I think perhaps we don't need to do everything.
Do less.
Why don't we do the things that we notice feel really good? And like, that's what you focus on doing. So let's make this list. And then from that list, let's pull out, okay, I noticed this actually did feel really good, so I'm going to do that. Oh yeah, I noticed this felt really good, so I'm going to do that. And we both have done so much in our journeys to try and create our own optimized routine and playbook. There is so much to do, but I think how we begin to take the steps to optimizing for ourselves is making that list and then simply like pulling out the things that you have noticed work really well for you and then leaving the others behind. There will be times when we cycle through those things. We're like, okay, I'm not feeling the benefit of that as much anymore, so I'm going to move to this one. And that's okay. That's like the flexibility and the play, that we have with life. That's exactly where that is.
Take the best and throw out the rest.
Yes, exactly.
I know for me, I have tried to do yoga my entire life. I have been told by every doctor, every coach, everybody in my life how good yoga is for you. Every time I tried to do it, it was so activating. I would be agitated, irritable. I mean, I would leave with my blood pressure higher just because of the stress that it brought to me by the slowness. Well, now, fast forward, having gone through some recovery and learning to be embodied and learning the value of stillness. Now yoga has become something where if I go 2-3 days without it, I'm starting to jones for it. And it's just a different whole makeup of who I am now. So it's some of these tools, they may not work for you on a Monday, but by Friday, they're going to be exactly what you need. And a lot of this is really important to take note that you have to take notes. And it's about tracking and recording, because every day, like we mentioned, is different. It's going to be in this cycle and where you're at. So if we're able to be intentional and take notes and see what works for us, write a little yes or no, simple as that, then we have something to fall back on.
Exactly. I love it.
I'm experimenting with fasting now based on when my body wants it. So I wake up in the morning and I spend like 5 minutes with myself and I'm like, do I have hunger? Am I just trying to numb something? Like what do I need today? And like the last couple of days I've fasted almost all morning because I didn't need it. But a week ago I was eating breakfast.
Keto.
Keto's huge because that's a huge.
I have found, this was so weird. I was just talking to my husband about this, that keto has never worked for me. Never whatsoever. Like I have had massive amounts of brain fog. I've never like gone past a stage. I mean, and I've done keto, like medical keto for 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks at a time. It never actually worked for me. But fasting according to the cycle, amazing. Like I have loved it. It's been metabolically very advantageous for me. And they do similar things, right? But again, I have found for myself, one has worked better than the other for me.
And I haven't experienced the cycling and fasting with any intentional practice. However, I have recognized in the last couple months, I've been kind of dabbling with fasting again. And I recognize when my body needs it and then when I don't. So I'm curious in my own journey, what that looks like on me, where I'm at in my cycle, and if I'm actually matching just by being embodied and feeling what I need, if I'm actually already doing the protocol.
That would be so interesting. Protein's another one that honestly, I'm like, I feel completely fine at like 2/3 of the quote unquote recommended protein amount.
Which is hard to get in.
And that's so hard to get in. So I've just decided like, I'm going to have like this goal of like 2/3 the recommended amount, which is like for me about 110 grams of protein. And I cannot get 150 grams. And when I do not notice any difference. So
that's where I'm at. I haven't really noticed the difference. And I did bodybuilding for 6 months with a trainer and a whole diet and meal plan. And I actually was 2 months out from competing on stage and I had zero energy, zero strength. I actually went to shift one day and we just done, a little exercise on the drill ground, real basic. And then we got a call and I remember picking up the axe to go put in the compartment and it seemed heavy to me. And I remember thinking, this isn't right.
Like, this is problematic.
This is a problem. If we get a fire and I can't pick up an axe, like what am I going to do now? So that was an interesting moment in my life because I was the most in shape you could ever be. And I looked fantastic, yet I had no strength and I had zero energy.
Yeah. It is a real thing.
But what else, like besides fasting, since we touched on that, what's another kind of wellness facet you want to go into?
So let's talk about training and movement. This is hilarious too, because I have found for myself, it's so interesting. Like the shoulds, we're so often driven by the shoulds. So you had mentioned CrossFit before, right? I actually love CrossFit style training in the sense that you're moving heavy stuff and you're getting your heart rate up, right? Like I could go with a 40-minute chipper workout and like feel great and it makes me smile and I love it. Those 7-minute go all out workouts where you leave nothing in the tank. I don't know if it's just like me as a person. What I define as leaving nothing in the tank is like not actually what I should be doing. But when I first got into CrossFit, I would do those workouts and I would go home and I would lay on the floor for like an hour. It took me so long to recover from those workouts. I hate them. I absolutely hate them.
I'm curious then where you started because you're supposed to drain and empty your tank by the end of the workout. But it's so different for all of us because some of us come in there with a full tank to be able to work out on. Whereas if you're starting with only a 20% in your tank, so yeah, maybe you get to that zero marker a lot faster, but then you're depleting your tank actually. So you're not even going to zero, you're going past that.
Yeah, that would not surprise me at all for how I felt. But imagining doing that like on shift for a workout, I would be so gassed. Like when I would do that at the start of my day at home, I wouldn't even recover for the day. Like I'd just be like,
I kept emergency Snickers in all of my pockets just for that reason. If I had a hard workout or something, we were out on the drill ground for a couple hours and we dropped a fire, that was the first thing I did as an
freaking brilliant
engineer driver.
Stash fruit snacks now in my pockets.
Yeah. Snickers, but just don't go into a fire with them because they will melt.
Oh, yeah, they would melt. So that's like HIIT training essentially, which I now have transitioned more into the like Tabata style HIIT training, and I find that works a little bit better for me. But I do love a good chipper.
See, and I'm the opposite. I love a good HIIT.
Mm.
And I only like a good HIIT workout. I would very much say based on my cycle, because there are some days when that feels so good in my body and exactly what I need. And then there are other days where I can't even start the workout because I have no motivation. Yeah. But the HIIT overall, that 20-minute quick intensity and switching it up seems to hit the spot perfect now for me. That's amazing. No more 2 hours of lifting and bodybuilding and then still doing your cardio for another hour.
And that actually touches on training, not just training duration, but training regularity. Like women actually don't need 5-6 days of workouts.
I didn't know that.
We don't need that. It's too taxing. So the last 3, even maybe 4 fitness and training experts that I've worked with have said you can do in 3 days of work more healthfully than 6 days of workouts.
See, and I'm a believer, if 3 to 5 days a week is good, then 7 days is what I should be doing.
But again, that relates to that load and that strain. So more working out is adding more strain. And if you're doing that, on either a day that you are on shift, so you're going to get less sleep, or coming off, that just adds more stress to the body, which means if you have more stress, you also need more recovery time. And we need, it's crazy. I'm not going to get into the stats around sleep too much until our episode on sleep. But it takes, so when they look at athletes who have had sleep debt, they've actually shown for every hour you are under like severe stress and strain, it takes a full day to recover.
For every 1 hour of heavy strain, it takes a full day to recover. Wow.
With sleep debt. So like if you have sleep debt and you're under strain, it takes a full day to recover. So like we, just with our lifestyle, we're not able to get that. So of course our tank is going to be more and more depleted. And then we add things like HIIT workouts coming off shift when we've had 2.5 hours of sleep and 20 calls.
Yeah.
Like how can we not expect our bodies to hold on to weight? And how can we not expect our bodies to how can we expect our bodies to have an abundance of energy? Like it's just not realistic.
And the starvation we put our bodies through.
Yes.
Just being on scene for 3-4 hours and you're working out too much. Well, you hadn't eaten for 3 hours before that. Now we're totally draining the tanks and we're running on empty.
Yeah.
Nothing in our system.
So like for that reason, I started my journey as a biohacked firefighter, and I was looking for biohacks that could help. So, in biohacking, we do have like cold plunging and sauna and red light therapy are kind of the overarching few, and then sunlight and steps. I do incorporate all of those things, but now I do them especially like cold plunging, it's only during certain times in the cycle. And I don't personally ever just straight cold plunge. It's always in tandem with sauna. So contrast therapy, cold, hot, cold, hot. I never just do cold plunges. I absolutely despise them. I hate them so much.
You're not alone. Me too.
But if I'm alternating with the heat, it does something entirely different with my physiology. I know you also have a sauna at home.
I do. And then I do hot yoga every day.
Okay.
So we use a sauna. It's only heated to about 98, 100 degrees, which seems to be the sweet spot because we're in there for an hour moving and breathing. But it's just enough to really feel like it cleans out my system and detoxes. And for a while there, I was coming home and doing the cold plunge, but I find it not enjoyable at all. And so unless I'm in a group or a community, I don't love cold plunging. I love that for everybody else. I love that for them, just not for me.
Well, and you're probably naturally listening to your body because now there's this explosion in the research world that cold plunges actually aren't even beneficial for women.
And not at 40 degrees. So cold plunge needs to be warmer temperature, around 51.
Yes. And with those cold plunges and the higher temperature, we still don't need to do them outside this window in our cycle. So again, all these benefits from all this. And actually, when it comes to women, it's a completely different story. But that said, there are women do a cold plunge and they are energized. So again, you absolutely have to look at how does this make me feel?
And I'm curious the energized, if that's energized or if that's that human power and superpower that I love when my nervous system is actually engaged.
Yes.
So I think there's a little balance there and a tricky slope between activating your sympathetic and, being up and going versus just being perked for the day and at your baseline.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I know that the research supposedly shows that there is that increase in, homogeneous dopamine. There are other ways we can also increase our energy, like red light therapy. My new favorite thing in the morning, every morning that I can, I get up and the very first thing I do besides drinking water, I get in front of my red light panel. I get on my little rebounder and I do Qigong. So I guess it's more like a mix of a blend of Qigong and somatic practices where I'm just moving slowly and intentionally waking up my body, but I'm in front of a red light, which promotes energy. So I almost never wake up with energy. Almost never. Where there's the combination of adrenal fatigue and then, just the demand and load of shift work. But so for me, I start my day like that because it does wake up my body gently and it gives me energy. But I have also tried morning yoga. I found morning yoga did not give me energy.
Yeah.
So again,
it all depends how you tune in with your body, because I also relate to what you said, and that's part of my morning ritual as well. And I do the Qigong and turn sideways and I engage my liver and all these different things, and I'm clearing my meridians and my channels, and I can't buy into all the woo-woo language about it. However, I notice a difference in my mental state for the day and how prepared I am. And I'm a little bit jealous of your red therapy light. I'll just have to add that to my repertoire of things to put in my closet.
I love that. So I'm really curious what energetic and somatic practices you have seen out there that are options for people to do, and then what ones you have done that you have found made a difference, just in maybe a 30-second overview.
Shaking. That has been a huge one I've been using recently. I have a lot on my plate. I am in my master's program. I'm starting a business. I just medically retired. So all these different things I have to transition between each day. So as I'm going from schoolwork to then starting my business, in between, I've started shaking and just actually intentionally shaking off one focus and what I've been focused on, shaking it out and relaxing, bringing my nervous system back down to then have the attention and the clarity for my next task.
Mm-hmm. What are other options women could do that may also produce kind of the same effect?
One of the fastest things that I found is by activating and doing your vagal tone. So I just do some simple breath work, but now on the release, I actually sigh and heavily make an exhale so you can hear it and feel it, and it engages your vagal nerve, which is your longest nerve in the front of your body, all the way down. So by engaging that, it's like an immediate power switch. It just lowers the light just a little bit.
I love that.
And you can do that anywhere. You can hum to your favorite song. Sometimes in the radio, my daughter's listening to the same song from the same soundtrack. So it gets a little old, but I use that as an opportunity to just hum along and activate my vagal. My friends and I from rehab, we joke and we would do these vagal exercise, and we call it vagaling yourself. And we'd ask each other, have you vagaled today? And we just kind of made it a pun on the word. But just by that little practice and accountability, having someone ask, that put it enough in my mind and practice that I realized there's a benefit. Now I do it all the time.
It's so interesting you say that, because I've recently really started doing a lot with HRV training. And the two things that are so fun with that is movement and breath. For me, it's not specifically shaking, but I put on music and I like go batch crazy with dancing and just like shaking it out and doing, like stomping and shaking my arms and just letting like it be almost a release, but incorporating the music makes it like extra fun.
I think it gives you direction, almost, the music.
I could see that.
It helps channel what my body needs to expend the energy.
And I've never been a dancer. I've never, such a big part of my journey has been connecting to my body. So I haven't been like historically body aware or comfortable being in my body, but that's been a really fun way to like get my heart rate up and, like have that energetic release. And also I'm focusing on breathing in that space too. I have found that as a post-shift practice that has been such a phenomenal reset for me. And then after doing all that movement, I sit and I partake in hape, which is a legal tobacco, which you don't actually smoke, but it has provided this like physiological reset that I feel like I'm coming home and back into my body in a really, really cool way. And basically like can talk to my body about like how shift was. Like that was a lot. Like I felt a lot in that shift. And then, I consider like, okay, how can I better support my nervous system in that situation? Or like, that was actually a really fun, great shift. And, we're just like reveling in the power of who we are and what we did. But there have been times that I've done that. I've done like the shaking and the dancing, and then I've not done it. And recently I have just gone back to it. I'm like, wow, this is so amazing for where I am.
And why did I ever stop?
And why did I ever stop?
I ask myself that all the time. I get my 8 weeks in and I'm like, okay, new hobby, new thing. But I love how you mentioned dancing, because I think of it as a way to connect with your inner child in a way too. It's just such a light and fun way to connect with yourself. And then afterwards, sitting in that silence, it's like sitting in the glow. Like when you see kids out on the playground, they're playing and they're having a great time, and then they're really calm after and collected. It's just like a glow that you sit in, and then you can be really reflective and go back and really reflect on your experiences. In this case, your last shift.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel the need to do the opposite, where I sit first and then I dance. And that's also a really interesting approach too, because it's like I become aware of what needs to be released, and then I can do it through dancing. I'm curious, what are some of the most outrageous things you've spent your money on?
Oh my gosh. So many things. I would say the most recent one was about 6 months ago. Well, I was actually healing my ankle. I had a torn ligament in my ankle about 1.5 years ago. And so it still kind of bothers me sometimes. So finally I decided to PT it. But I bought this shaker plate that you stand on, because one, it's supposed to loosen all your tendons and get everything aligned and strengthen all these little accessory muscles. And then, of course, there's the, oh, you're going to lose weight. And if you step on it this day, you're going to lose 50 pounds in a week. So there was that draw to buy it as well, right? But whether it works or not, I have no idea. However, I have noticed that when I'm activated and I stand on that thing, it mimics shaking. I mean, that's literally what it does, shakes your entire body. So it's kind of like a grounding tool now. So although I bought it as a PT and to help strengthen my ankle, which I have zero confidence that it did, I've repurposed it, so it's not a complete waste. But that is one of the silliest things I own that I never leave around, so that it's under my bed and nobody sees it. I pull it out when no one's around.
That's hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I think for me, I definitely was in my head on the shoulds that, this was, I think, 7 months ago, that I should be cold plunging. And so I bought a $250 cold plunge when prior I had just been filling my bathtub and like throwing ice in there. I was like, I should do this. So I'm going to spend $250 so I make myself do it.
Accountability, right? I'll make myself do it.
Make myself. Yes. I swear, it's huge. I've used it maybe twice. So
I returned mine. I bought one and then I bought it for the station and we used it a couple times. And then, the initial desire to use something fancy and new wore off. And so then I just returned it to my Amazon rentals, I call them.
I'm going to be doing the same because there's no point in keeping it. And I think that's ultimately what the bottom line message that I hope has come across it from this podcast, today's episode, that we don't live by the shoulds. Don't live on.
Don't should on yourself.
Don't should on yourself. Oh,
we should not should on ourselves.
Don't should on yourself. Do the things that you notice make you feel good and play with the options that you have and notice and become aware and build that relationship with yourself, because ultimately those are the things that will actually boost and support your performance and your ability to show up in your job as your full self. But it doesn't happen by shitting on yourself.
No, it does not. You have to be very intentional.
Is there anything else that we have in this space to give our audience this week?
I just say lean into like what you said feels good, but also in that I invite you to allow yourself to feel good.
Yeah.
I know there were so many times where I just thought feeling bad was normal. And there was days when I felt less bad and I thought that's what feeling good was. And I was almost afraid to do different therapies to feel good, because then I have to face whatever's going to come in when you're feeling good and you're able and ready to face it. But just allow yourself to feel good and know that you deserve it just because you're here.
Don't be resigned to feeling shitty all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because we deserve to feel our best. Feeling our best will allow us to also be our best.
And to give our best.